Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hey, Catholic pilgrims, it's day 124 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. So today we are finishing up the last little bit of how Sister Faustina wants her new congregation to function. And I think as you read through this, you're going to think to yourself, hardcore. And at least that's what I thought as I was reading through this. I was like, man, I don't know that I would be cut out for this. I am a very weak person if this is how you have to live. But thank goodness there are people out there who have this ability, because I know that their prayers are heard and that they do so much good. So let's jump right in. Our readings today are from Notebook 2, numbers 554 through 558. Enclosure. No one may enter the enclosure without the special permission of the ordinary and under very special circumstances, such as the administration of the sacraments to the ill in order to prepare them for death and for the burial rites. There also may be need of letting in a workman to do some repairs, but for this a specific permission will be required. The door to the enclosure will always be locked, and only the superior will have the key. The use of the parlor. None of the sisters will make use of the parlor without special permission of the superior, and the superior should not permit frequent visits. Those who have died to the world should not be going back to it, not even through conversations. But if the superior thinks it right to permit some sister to go to the parlor, let her observe the following directions. She herself should accompany the sister, and if she cannot do so, she should arrange to be replaced by a sister who will be bound to confidence and must not repeat what she has heard, but who is to inform the superior of everything. Conversations ought to be short, unless there is permission for extra time for the sake of the person who has come for the visit. However, the curtain is not to be drawn aside except for very special cases, as for example when a mother or father urgently asks for this to be done. Letters. Every sister may write sealed letters to the ordinary to whom the house is subject. For any other letter, permission is required, and the sister shall hand the letter unsealed to the superior. The superior is to be guided by the spirit of love and prudence, and has the right to send or withhold the letter in the light of whatever is for the greater glory of God. However, I would like very much that such communications be as rare as possible. Let us help people by prayer and mortification, and not by correspondence. Confession. Both the regular and the extraordinary confessors for the community will be appointed by the ordinary bishop. There will be one regular confessor, and he will hear the sisters' confessions once a week. The extraordinary confessor will come once every 3 months, and each sister is obliged to see him, even if she makes no confession. The 2 confessors will hold their posts in the convent for 3 years. Then there will be a secret vote, and the superior will submit the results to the ordinary. The confessor can be reappointed for an additional 3 years, and even a third 3-year term. The sisters will make their confession through a locked grill. The conferences to the community will also be given through a grill covered with a dark curtain. The sisters will never talk among themselves about confession or the confessors. Rather, let them pray for them that God may give them the light to direct their souls. Holy Communion. The sisters should never talk about who goes more and who goes less frequently to Holy Communion. They should refrain from passing judgment on this subject, which does not concern them. All judgments in this matter belong exclusively to the confessor. The superior may speak to a sister not to inquire why she is not going to communion, but simply to make confession available to her. The superior should never dare to enter into the domain of the sisters' consciences. The superior may sometimes arrange that the community offer communion for a certain intention. Each sister should strive for the greatest purity of soul so that she might receive the divine visitor every day. I told you it was hardcore. So as you're reading through this, were you thinking to yourself, yeah, I could do that, or man, that would be terribly hard? As I was reading through it, And through the past 2 days, as we've been looking at how she wants this organization to run, I have been thinking to myself, wow, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if I would be cut out for the religious life, because there would be so much that I would have to work on, especially my mouth. Oh my gosh, just in the fact that I talk a lot. That would be a huge struggle for me. So, what I thought we would talk about today is, the religious life is very different than a lay person's life, obviously. There's a reason why that's a separate vocation. It just looks different, and it's handled different, and it's lived differently. And so, there's a huge contrast between how a lay person lives in the world and how a religious person lives in the world. And now, not all religious live this strictly. There are a lot of religious sisters who make their way out into the world, to help. St. Mother Teresa obviously was out in the world. She wasn't not speaking to people, and she was not, in a convent where she did not come out and live within the world. So obviously this is not how every convent runs. However, it's still different. Religious live different lives. And I thought it was good to take some of the things that she talked about today and kind of compare and contrast and see, would this be something good to add to our lives in a certain way? Or is it something that is strictly for the religious? And so the first one, where she's talking about the enclosure, this is where, they live within their convent and they don't really come out, and not very many people come in. And obviously this doesn't work for lay people. And for them, it works because this is what they're devoted to. They're devoted to removing themselves, like she said, be dead to the world, removing themselves and, staying within the convent walls. And because of what they're doing, they're offering the sacrifice to God for souls. They're praying constantly, and they're doing penances and mortifications for souls. So, out in the world as lay people, this is just not possible because, we have friends and children and spouses. And so, to not have people come into our homes ever and to just lock ourselves inside, it's not beneficial, and we would not be able to bring the good news to people like we should. So in this regard, when comparing and contrasting the religious life to, a layperson's life, this obviously isn't something that we should do. In fact, we should be inviting people into our homes because, with our vocation and the way that we live our lives, we should be welcoming people so that we can share our Catholic faith with them, bring people in to love and serve them, and, just get to know them. This is what's part of the layperson's vocation, is to be engaged with the public so that they can see Catholic people living out their faith and be invited into their circle so that they can experience love and fellowship. The next thing is the use of the parlor. And I imagine this is a room where they receive visitors, as she was kind of describing. And again, what they're trying to accomplish is something totally different than what lay people are trying to accomplish in the world. And I wish that we did this more. We've gotten to that point now in our culture where, we only want to invite people over if we've scheduled out a time. And if somebody shows up at our door unannounced, we are all afluster and we don't know what to do with ourselves, and it just throws us out of whack. And, one thing about my grandmothers is when I would be visiting them and a visitor would show up at the door, they were so happy. They just welcomed them in and let me get some coffee. I got some cookies over here. My grandmothers always have desserts prepared. And, come in, sit down and, sit and tell me what's going on with yourself. Let's talk. And I think a lot of us feel pressure that if somebody comes over to our house that we have to entertain them 24/7. And so just sitting and talking with somebody is unusual for us now. But I wish we did this more. I wish we just, invited a lady over to have some coffee and maybe some dessert and just sit and talk. And how are you doing? What's going on with your kids? How how have you been? Or if somebody just shows up announced, or if the neighbor just walks over, that we don't freak out and hide away, acting like we're not home, because this is how relationships are formed. And so I wish we did this more. And, my grandmothers were great examples of this. And it's a hard thing to do now because people don't receive it and people don't even try anymore, it seems like. The next one is letters. And she doesn't want them to write very many letters. She says at the end, let us help people by prayer and mortification and not by correspondence. And so this is another place where I think we should do this more as lay people. My great aunt, who was more like a grandmother to me, was a huge letter writer. She had been an English teacher in her younger years. And she loved to correspond with me and my cousins. And we would always get these letters in the mail with this fancy cursive writing. And, she would ask us questions and we were expected to write her back. And I always did. And I always loved getting letters in the mail from her. And because she was an English teacher, I always had to watch my I's and me's and all that stuff. Otherwise, she would correct me. But, it was so fun to get letters in the mail. And then as me and my cousin, or as my cousin and I, which one is it? got older, we started writing to each other. And, it was so exciting to get a letter in the mail. And it's special because it shows people that you thought about them and took the time to write it down. That you wanted to correspond with them, not just through a text and a 2-line sentence text or something like that, but that you specifically wanted to just write and ask them how they're doing and let them know what's going on in your life. And I like to write letters. I write lots of letters. I still do that practice. And gosh, I wish it was something that we did more of because I just think it's a great way to connect. The next one is confession. The sisters go to confession weekly. And I would say on this one, we need to be more like the sisters. Now, I know most of us can't get to confession once a week. They've got confessors showing up at their convent, and, they have this very scheduled time for it, and they don't have kids and work out in the world like, most of us do. And so it's easier for them to go once a week. But I wish we went once a month. And gosh, how much richer our lives would be if we were getting to confession on a monthly basis. So in that regards, we need to be more like, the religious. And then the last one is Holy Communion. And, the religious sisters go every day. They go every day to Mass and receive Holy Communion. Though she says if for some reason they're not, you shouldn't be asking about that. Maybe there's some circumstances that we're not privy to. And so, don't pass judgment. But, I do wish that we could obviously get to Holy Communion more, because just like we have to eat every day and drink every day, our soul needs to be fed every day. And, I know I'm not going to guilt anybody into this. I know for families and people who are working and things like that, it's hard to get to daily Mass. But if you can, and if you have that time, man, I would highly encourage it. Like I think I've told you before in a previous podcast, my husband's grandparents went to daily Mass every day, and it was incredible. And when we went to stay with them the first time, I was not Catholic. And I think we got up at like 4:30 in the morning because they wanted to have breakfast, before the Eucharist. And I was like, oh, wow, this is dedication. And I'm really tired. But, now looking back on it, I'm like, wow, they were amazing. And what a spectacular witness to my husband. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I know that was kind of short and sweet and, a little bit different readings than we've been used to. But we are now moving on from this, it looks like, from what I've tried to read ahead. And so we will get back into some more of maybe her deeper thoughts. So I will see you back here for day 125. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.